All right, well, it is at the bottom of the hour. We want to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our session of Manage Windows Updates in the Cloud. I'm Julie Andriacola, and I am a subject matter expert with our introductory session. We're going to be talking about what is Windows Update for Business, the recommended configurations. We're also going to be talking about what to do with Windows 11, and then we're going to finish off with some helpful resources to keep things going. So let's look right ahead into, all right, just getting started. So if you are brand new to Windows updates, maybe you just got assigned this new role in your organization, we're going to help you out with a few common questions that I hear. Number one, what have I gotten myself into? Well, it's super important work. It's work that all organizations must do each month to keep that user safe from cyber attack. You do it right, and you're going to be a hero. If you do it poorly, everyone's going to complain that you rebooted their machine or broke their device. So how often do you need to update Windows? Simply said, every month. We release our cumulative updates or patches once a month, and as soon as we do, the bad actors are going to start creating exploits to attack the end user's devices. So patch every month, keep your environment secure. What is Patch Tuesday? It's the second Tuesday of every month. That's the day that Microsoft releases the update and fixes all of the vulnerabilities. Often there are over 100 vulnerabilities each month. That number will vary. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, but we always document each one in what we call a CVE. CVEs are a public number that's used globally to identify and define and catalog all the vulnerabilities and keep track of them. So your security organizations may be very interested in that. So Windows Update, does it break software or cause problems? Well, occasionally there are issues that arise, which is why we recommend a ringed approach. And I'm going to be talking about that specifically. We want you to divide your devices into multiple groups. A small pilot device, a small pilot group gets the updates first and then gradually move to your next largest group. This provides a way to see how the update reacts to your specific environment. You can pause the update should you discover an issue, but what we really want you to do is open a support ticket. If you believe the update caused an issue, we need to know about that, and that's the fastest way to make us aware of any potential issues. We also have a Windows Release Health Dashboard. This is a listing of all the known issues and workarounds and how they're being resolved. So don't miss though, a hidden gem here in your admin portal. That's admin.microsoft.com. Under Health, you will find a Windows Release Health Dashboard that's really detailed, and I encourage you to look for that. It really is a hidden gem. My end users hate getting their machines updated. What can I do? Well, typically this is due to policies that are rebooting their machines in the middle of a user doing their work, oftentimes without warning. Windows Update for Business is excellent in that it eliminates that problem. We're going to be going over the recommended settings for that best user experience while ensuring that the machines are updated. And the number one question that I get is, especially over the last couple months, and we're going to repeat this a couple times, Windows 11 has been released. How do I prevent the machines from automatically upgrading before we are ready? No need to worry. No commercial managed devices will get upgraded automatically. You will need to deploy a policy to upgrade them when you're ready. So as long as you've got Intune, Config Manager, or some other management tool, those machines will not be upgraded automatically. All right, I've answered a bunch of questions. I know we probably have some experts here in the audience who've been doing Windows updates for a while. I challenge you to post your best advice to someone who's brand new on what they should remember and do as they adopt all of these things. Have you ever heard the term Whoopie? Besides being the name for this adorable puppy, it's an acronym for Windows Update for Business. So you will hear IT pros using this just to shorten things up, but it always means Windows Update for Business. All right, let's talk about some terms that you'll see within the policy, the update ring profiles. So quality updates. This is that monthly update, comes out on Patch Tuesday. It's also what we call our latest cumulative update. All of the Windows updates are cumulative, so each update contains every fix from when the update was released till that day. It's a mix of security fixes as well as non-security fixes. Feature updates. Feature updates for Windows 10, they occur every 6 months. Windows 11, we've changed that. That's going to be every 12 months. These feature updates bring in the new features for Windows 10. It's moving Windows from one version to the next. All right, when will these updates install? We have several terms that go into that formula of when the install happens and when that reboot happens. The first one is deferral period. This is the number of days past the update release. So Patch Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month, that's when the deferral period counting begins. And you'll see this in my examples later on. Deadline, that's the number of days before the update is installed automatically and the reboot needs to happen. You can also have a grace period, which we do recommend. Those are some additional days after the deadline that the user can defer the restart. So think of this example. Maybe you got to take 2 weeks of vacation, and when you come back, you have hundreds of emails to read, but the deadline has passed for your monthly update. Instead of having to reboot your machine right in the middle of reading all those emails because of this deadline, you get a little bit of grace. So we encourage our organizations to leverage these. It will still continue to keep your compliance, keep your machines updated, but providing that really great user experience. All right, device restarts. So there's 2 different ways that restarts happen. One is the automatic restart, and this leverages the Windows Intelligent Updating. So it's going to look for times where the user's not there or the computer is in a good position. So for example, we don't want to restart a device when a user's in a phone call, or perhaps they're playing a game, or maybe their machine's not plugged in, their laptop's not plugged in and the battery is really low. Those are all terrible times to prompt for a reboot. So we look for times outside of that, outside of the active hours, in order to do that automatic restart. You can also do a scheduled restart. That's when you set a specific time for updates and for those restarts to happen. However, the machine needs to be on at that time. So if you have things like laptops that in our mobile, work from home world, this is not necessarily a great end user solution. Now, you may have a group of machines that are always on, and this would be a good candidate for a scheduled restart. But for end user devices, generally we find the automatic restart is going to work better. All right, so let's talk about active hours. So active hours is the period of time that you expect the device to be in use. You can define that in your policies. However, think about taking advantage of what we call the intelligent active hours. This was a new feature that was introduced in Windows 10 1903, and it lets Windows use machine learning and AI to determine what that particular user's active hours are, so that you don't need to guess. So encourage you to leverage that and in your policies. Maintenance time, that's kind of an older term. You'll still see it occasionally, but that was designed for the older versions of Windows, where we provide a set time for the updates to start. Again, oftentimes like a maintenance window, and it's still very commonly used in the servers. But again, active hours is what the more modern, what you would look to use with Windows 10 or 11. Okay, so we've talked about all of our terms. So hopefully that'll help bring some clarity to all of these new words if this is new to you. But let's talk about how you go about implementing. So the first thing you're going to need to do is create those groups. Remember how I said you don't want to push the update to 100% of your organization all in one day. Space it out to be able to find any sort of issues that your environment might have. So we're going to create some groups. So what we like you to do is to leverage these multiple groups, and this is just a graphical example of what it might look like. So maybe a very small group then a larger group, maybe 2.5% of your population, moving on up to 11%, 35%, and then the rest of your organization. So let's take a look at what that strategy might specifically look like. So this example right here, and again, this is just an example. You're going to look at your organization, your needs, and define these update rings that work for your organization. So the pilot ring, that very small group, get that taken care of that first day. Deferral is 0. The deadline is 0. That means those patches are going to install and the reboot is going to happen on Patch Tuesday. So you know right away if there's any immediate issues. Your next ring, slightly larger, and this time I would encourage you to make sure you're including machines from different lines of businesses. So the deferral period as 1 day and a deadline of 1 day. So again, you've got machines that may be a machine that's from HR, a machine that's from your finance department and your other lines of business. So again, it's still a small ring, but that's going to help you understand how these updates are interacting with any sort of specific line of business software. Pilot ring 3. Again, we have a longer deferral, 3 days after Patch Tuesday with a deadline of 1 day. And this time I would suggest making sure that you're including machines from the different locations in your area. So maybe you have a number of retail stores or warehouses. Make sure you have one machine from each one of those locations in this third ring. That way that machine will go out, get the content and install it and restart. And that content will then be there for the rings to follow, where we can use a technology called delivery optimization that's built right into Windows, where those devices, instead of going out to the internet, will say, hey, this machine already has this update. I'm just going to get it from that machine. So from there, you're moving into production. You've gone through the pilots. No issues have been found. You haven't needed to pause any of your update rings, which would be a typical month. We rarely see issues widespread across all organizations. So this first production ring, a larger group, maybe 35%. And look, here we've got that deferral at 5 days, the deadline at 3 days, which means that those machines will be updated and rebooted by day 8 after your Patch Tuesday. Your production ring, here's your production ring. Here we've set a deferral of 9 days and a deadline of 3 days. This is the ring where you would want to put your critical machines in, which you need to absolutely make sure are not going to be affected. And that would be your last and final ring. So in this particular example, you would have all of your machines patched and updated by day 12 following your Patch Tuesday. Again, only an example, but hopefully it'll get you thinking about how you want to structure those groups. And I'll just remind everyone, we've got these experts in the chat, so please be posting your questions. They're busily answering away. All right, let's talk about the policies for these different groups that we've made. So we are looking specifically at Intune today. All of what I'm showing you could be done with group policy as well. We're not going to cover that in this particular presentation, but I'm going to have some resources if you're limited to using that. Intune is great in that it's available everywhere without a VPN. So we definitely recommend that. So let's go look at how you might go about defining these policies. Okay, feature updates. Feature updates with Intune, a feature update deployment. Again, this is under devices within Intune. This is a newer policy, just out in the last year or so. And it gives you that specific control over the operating system version. This was really important because many organizations were stuck. They didn't want to set deferral time, number of days for feature updates. They wanted to be able to pin a particular group to a version of Windows 10. So this allows them to do that. It's ideal for skipping versions. Perhaps your organization says, hey, we are only going to install Windows 10 on the fall versions. That's fine. This policy will let you do that easily, and you'll have that granular control that you're looking for specifically feature updates, while still leveraging the update rings for your quality updates. It does show that this is in public preview. That's true, but it's fully supported, and we encourage you to use it. It's also, we don't want you to combine this policy with the update deferral in your update ring. We found that that can produce some confusion. So just as you'll see in my next slide here, we want the update ring feature deferral to be days to be set to 0. And then you would use this policy by simply switching the version that you want to deploy. And those machines would then start to process that feature update. Again, any questions? Put them into the chat. All right, let's talk about the update rings. We just finished talking about that brand new feature update policy. Now we're talking about the second policy called the update rings. And you want one of these policies for each one of your groups. So you have choices here. Semi-annual channel, that's your servicing channel. That's your typical version of Windows 10. You can also select Windows Insider channels as well. Certainly don't want to do that for your production environment, but it's always great to be able to have maybe a small group that's on that Insider channel, and you can control those updates as well from this. Microsoft product updates. These are products that don't update themselves. For example, it'd be like Visual Studio or Windows, Visual Studio or I'm blanking. .NET is another example, as well as Offices that are MSI versions. Those are all examples of these products that will still update through this. Windows drivers. This is probably the biggest use case I see a benefit of going to Windows Update for business. Patching drivers is difficult in any sort of traditional manner. By letting Windows Update for Business take over, you'll be able to leverage all of the different OEMs that are publishing their drivers to Windows Update and keep those machines current. What I see happening is when you do this, your upgrades from one version of Windows 10 to the next are so much more smooth. A lot of times these upgrades are restricted because the drivers aren't up to date. By taking advantage of this service, you won't have to do anything. It's a set it and forget it thing. And Windows Update will automatically detect what drivers and what versions are to be pushed to those devices. Now, I will say that these drivers don't follow deferral policies and they don't follow Patch Tuesday rhythm. So they will appear at various times once they become relevant for that particular device. So I will say that if you are starting in on Windows Update for Business, that first month, 6 weeks, you will see a bunch more restarts than typical. So just let your end users know it's part of getting more secure. It goes fine. I've not seen any issues, but the users will notice that difference as their drivers get up to date. After that, there won't be so many updates once those drivers get caught up, and there'll be less disruptions. Here you can see I've got that quality update deferral set for 3 days. Feature updates, as I mentioned, 0. That's what we want. And then the feature update uninstall period, by default in Windows, it's 10 days. That's usually sufficient. I definitely don't see any need to change this with my customers. Now, if you'll notice, all of these settings here, the only one that's not the default is the Windows Update deferral period. So again, it's kind of a the less you do, the better it's going to be. We've already defined the optimal settings for most typical end user situations. All right, so let's talk about how we start to combine all of this stuff together with the deadline settings. So as you see, we've got the feature update deferral, again, set to 7. So 7 days after Patch Tuesday in our calendar here, you can see Patch Tuesday happens to fall on the 10th in this particular month. So the updates will become available to be installed automatically without any user intervention silently on the 17th. So over the 17th, 18th, and 19th, those updates will get installed, but the machine won't be required to reboot. Now the user will get some notifications saying that they should reboot, their organization is going to be expecting it, but they're not forced to do that during this period of time. Once that deadline hits on the 20th, now it has to be restarted. Now in this particular case, we've given a 4-day grace period. It's a little bit longer, but it allows that to go over that weekend time period and they're able to take advantage of that should they need to. Maybe they were traveling, or again, that vacation example. So again, as you see, the items in purple, the quality update, the deadline for the quality updates, and the grace period are the only things that you want to define here, that you'll be able to keep those other things set at the default. Okay, user experience settings. This is where you're going to create that user experience. The automatic update behavior, we suggest setting that to reset to default. That makes sure that if the machine has gotten any other policies along the way, that it resets it, and it resets it to the default, which is the Windows is going to be determining those active hours. So remember that Windows Intelligent Updating, that's what's going to take over in determining the active hours. And it will auto install those updates, prompt the user to restart. But again, that restart's not going to be forced until the machine hits the deadline. Restart checks. That's a great thing right here. Again, by default, that we say allow, and that's going to allow the machine to look at the conditions that it's in. Maybe the user's on a phone call, again, looking for those low batteries, things like that. It's going to check on that before prompting for that restart. Okay, these next two, the option to pause and to check for Windows updates, this is not your ability to do that. As the admin in the console, you will be able to pause updates. You'll also be able to uninstall updates right from the console. But sometimes users might need to pause updates. Maybe they're presenting in a big conference or something like that, and they want to pause their updates. They will be able to do that by going into their settings into Windows Update. It'll only be there for 7 days, and then they will be right back into the thick of things and following all of the policies that you've set. You can also have the option for the user to check for Windows updates. I find this is pretty handy if you're doing any sort of troubleshooting, so consider leaving that to be enabled. Then also we recommend leaving it to no to require the user approval for dismissing the restart notifications. These next two settings are what I call the nag settings. This is going to be what that user sees, that those bunch of users who just don't get around to restarting their device. So on the day that they are going to have to restart, they've used up all of their grace, all of their deadline. In this particular example, we've set it to 4 hours. They're going to get another reminder saying that it's coming. And then this final reminder, this is a permanent reminder that can't be dismissed, where they'll get that countdown to that 30 minutes before that restart is forced upon them. And this last one, of course, you want to keep this at the default Windows Update notifications. If you were to change this, the user wouldn't see any of this that we just set, and that would just be plain mean. So keep that to the default. All right, for the Windows, what I'm talking about as far as the different restarts, Windows 10, this is what your users are going to see. Again, you're seeing that picking a time, restarting tonight, or restart now. Windows 11, we took it a little bit further. And we've given you the additional information about how long that update is going to take. So great for being able to understand, the user can understand the difference in that restart between maybe a quality update, which is short, say 5 minutes, and a feature update, which could be much longer, say 30 minutes. All right, talking about Windows 11 one more time, a couple things that we've added into Windows 11. The biggest, my favorite, is the Windows 11 updates are 40% smaller. They've redone the underneath calculations and the way the files are moved so that these updates are significantly smaller. Huge advantage, especially if you have low bandwidth sites. Again, I'm emphasizing managed devices, those commercial devices that are being managed by Configuration Manager or Intune or another management product will not automatically upgrade. We want you to use that feature update policy to move devices to Windows 11 when you're ready, that very first policy that I showed you. And then the other great thing that we did is we combined both the latest cumulative update and the servicing stack updates all into one update. In the past, they have been separate, but engineering was able to work through that and be able to combine them into one update. All right, you've said all these things, but you've got some machines that maybe aren't behaving. The number one reason that I see when I talk to customers is conflicting policies. So you're moving to modern, you want to use Intune, but the machines aren't responding. Most likely you've got group policies that are setting some of the traditional WSUS servers. You're defining that internal server. That's probably the number one thing I see with almost every customer. You may not even know it's there. But the way that you can easily see it is to go onto one of your machines, go to your settings, to the Windows Update blade, click on this View Configured Update Policies, and that's going to bring up this window. It's going to list out all the policies that are being set on your device. You'll see in this example, all of them are modern device management. Perfect. That means they're coming from Intune. We don't see any group policy objects that could be conflicting. So this machine shouldn't have any problems moving forward. All right, that wraps up. We've kind of had this whirlwind thing. Hopefully you're asking great questions there in the chat. Do want to point you to some additional resources. We have a phenomenal learning path here, aka ms/learn/managed updates in the cloud. That covers even more in detail of the things that I went over today. If you're using Configuration Manager, be sure to check out the co-management blog. Really talks through the details of moving into co-management and some troubleshooting steps. The update baseline, if you don't have access to Intune, you can do all of what I talked about with GPOs. This update baseline is a perfect way to get started on that. It is GPO based only. Of course, we have additional information. You can go deep in the Windows Update settings for Intune, as well as some troubleshooting information. And if you still want help after all of that, guess what? We have Fast Track. For those customers with 150 or more licenses, you can get someone like me to help you move to Windows Update for Business. We'll come take a look at your environment, make some recommendations, make sure you're configuring everything correctly. All of this is included in your subscription. So go to aka.ms/fasttrack, simply register and request the services that you're interested in there. So I've gone through plenty of information. We just have a moment left. Is there any questions that we need to review, experts? No, we've got some. There's too many to answer. So great. I'm glad you guys asked some questions. And again, still are getting that question. Will Windows 11 automatically install on my devices? The answer is no. Managed devices, enterprise devices will not automatically be upgraded. You will need to create a policy to upgrade those devices yourself. We won't do it for you. There is going to be a post-event FAQ, so be on the lookout for that. We'll be publishing that in the IT Pro blog next week. You'll also find to the right a number of resources that we've talked about here, so you can just click on those to get the information. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending today and asking all these great questions. We're going to wrap things up. I look forward to meeting you, talking to you, and continuing to answer these questions to make sure that you are keeping your environment secure month after month. Thank you very much.